So Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon is finally hitting version 1.0 after a lengthy early access period that's seen its share of feedback, revisions, and incremental improvements. Developer Awakened Realms Digital is ready to unveil the complete vision. And after spending time with the full release ahead of its launch, I can say with confidence, this update isn't just a polished pass, it's a reintroduction. If you checked out Tainted Grail earlier in its development, what's arriving now is substantially different. The 1.0 release brings a sweeping range of new content, system overhauls, visual upgrades, and quality of life enhancements, and all of it works to anchor the game more confidently in the RPG space it's been trying to carve out. Let's start with the most immediate change, the world itself. Environments in Fall of Avalon have been dramatically expanded and refined. What once felt like disconnected or sparse zones have been restructured into a more cohesive and atmospheric landscape. There's a much stronger sense of place now. The world breathes, and more importantly, it connects. Forests are denser, ruins feel more deliberate, and there's a new sense of verticality and exploration that was missing from earlier builds. Caves, swamps, and dungeons now feel layered and narratively meaningful rather than just side areas for loot. This isn't just a facelift, the level design itself has evolved. Visual fidelity has taken a meaningful step up. Lighting in particular has improved dramatically with volumetric fog, better day-night transitions, and more grounded ambient effects. Towns look less sterile, interiors feel appropriately grimy or regal depending on where you are. There's a noticeable improvement in environmental storytelling too. Clutter, debris, lighting placement, it all feeds into the mood. It still doesn't push the upper limits of graphical realism, but it finally reaches a level of visual identity that feels intentional rather than utilitarian. Combat, one of the more criticized aspects during early access, has been reworked as well. Melee fights feel tighter and more responsive, with better enemy AI, improved hit feedback, and more distinct weapon types. You're still not getting Elden Ring tier combat, but it's a noticeable step forward. There's now real weight behind strikes, and dodging or blocking matters more than it did before. Stamina management actually feels meaningful. Magic has also been refined, and both mechanically and visually, offering more viable and satisfying build paths for players who prefer ranged or support playstyles. You can now specialize in different schools of magic that actually feel distinct rather than just dealing damage with a different particle effect. Buffs and debuffs have more tactical weight, and enemy resistances add a bit of light puzzle solving to fights. It's not just about gear anymore, it's about approach. But what really anchors this update is the new content. Version 1.0 brings in fully fleshed out questlines, more dialogue options, additional factions, and significantly more lore integration. The world finally feels like it has stakes and more importantly, consequences. Choices feel meaningful now, dialogue trees lead to different outcomes, and many of the side quests have been reworked or expanded to include new locations, new NPCs, and multi-stage progression. The writing, which always had potential, now carries more nuance and character. NPCs are more than just quest vendors. They have perspectives, conflicts, and in many cases, agendas. The dialogue system has been deepened just enough to let you steer interactions without turning everything into a morality checklist. And the game trusts you to sit with ambiguity, which is refreshing. If you played the early access version and found yourself wondering whether it was going to lean more into action or narrative or exploration, the answer now is yes to all of them. It's not just that there's more content, it's that the content now flows, the narrative pacing is better, the tone is more consistent. And while there's still that gritty, hopeless feel that defines Tainted Grail's atmosphere, it no longer comes at the expense of clarity or momentum. Crafting and inventory management have also been refined. You'll spend less time wrestling with UI and more time actually engaging with the systems. Tooltips are clearer, sorting is better, and there are subtle adjustments to how materials are used that make the crafting system feel less like busy work and more like a meaningful survival element. It's not revolutionary, but it's functional, and that alone is a win. Equipment progression too feels more rewarding. Loot placement has been balanced, and gear upgrades feel like actual progress rather than just stat bumps. Enemy variety has seen a needed boost. You're not fighting the same recycled mobs over and over again. There are new creature types, new animations, and more tactical encounters that force you to rethink positioning or ability use. Some enemies enemies use terrain to their advantage, others swarm in ways that test your resource management. Boss fights, in particular, feel more thought out now, not just in terms of mechanics, but also in presentation and stakes. There's an effort to make major encounters feel distinct through music, setting, or attack design, and it helps give structure to longer play sessions. One area where I was pleasantly surprised is audio. The soundscape has been improved across the board. Ambient noise, weather effects, footsteps on different terrain, and battle sounds have been tweaked or re-recorded. There's a richness to the audio mix now that supports the oppressive atmosphere the game's going for. Music too now shifts more organically depending on what's happening around you. It's subtle, but it adds a lot to immersion, especially when you're alone, low on health, and just trying to make it to the next fire. And yes, bugs have been squashed. That's not to say the game is bug-free, it's not. But stability is miles ahead of where it was even a few months ago. Load times are quicker, crashes are rare, quest-breaking bugs that were frustratingly common early on seem to be largely resolved. NPC pathfinding is still a bit wonky in crowded areas, and there are still some rough animation transitions, but for the most part, the game now plays how it should have played a year ago. You can feel the development team's focus on finishing this game with purpose, and that effort shows. Now I want to be clear, this isn't a reinvention. Tainted Grail is still very much the game it set out to be, a grim, slower-paced, exploration-heavy RPG rooted in a darker take on Arthurian legend. What version 1.0 does is deliver on that promise in a way that finally feels whole. It no longer feels like a draft, it feels like a game with something to say and the tools to say it. If you're someone who appreciates atmosphere, deliberate pacing, and the kind of RPGs that value world building over spectacle, there's a lot to like here. It doesn't chase trends, it's not trying to be a Souls-like or a power fantasy or a loot treadmill, it's doing its own thing, and version 1.0 finally gives that vision the foundation it needed. There's still room to grow, of course. Enemy could be even sharper, some dialogue sequences still feel wooden, and while the quest structure has improved, there are moments where it's clear the game is still leaning on traditional RPG frameworks. There are pacing dips and some fetch quests remain, though they're thankfully less frequent and better contextualized now. But at this point, these feel like edges rather than flaws. This isn't a game that's trying to win everyone over with spectacle. It's trying to build a world worth sinking into, and with version 1.0, it mostly succeeds. In short, Tainted Grail, the Fall of Avalon. Version 1.0 is the version worth paying attention to. It's the culmination of a long, sometimes rocky development, but it's also a statement of intent. The team didn't just finish the game, they completed it. So if you've been waiting to check it out, now's the time. And if you bounced off the early access version, this update may very well be the reason to give it another shot. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, or you want more deep dives like this, from early access evolutions to indie RPG standouts, stick around. There's more to cover and more worth discovering.